Two innocent little girls, Tori and Lily, full of life and dreams. And then, in one terrible moment, their world ends. But it wasn't some stranger who took their lives, it was their mother. Monica McCerrick killed them with a samurai sword. Why would she do this? The real reason is so much darker than you think. Stay tuned, because what pushed her over the edge? The answer will haunt you. Monica McCerrick had always dreamed of a fresh start, a new chapter in life, a new home, a new family. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for her and her twin daughters, Tori and Lily, to finally leave behind the shadows of the past. After years of struggles, painful arrests, a fractured relationship with her ex-husband, Monica thought California would be her chance to escape. A new life, a new city. She moved with her girls to a place called Fairfield. She was starting over, and with the help of her fiancé, Robert Polson, things seemed to be falling into place. They rented a cozy apartment at the Summit at Paradise Valley Complex, a quiet place in California. Robert, her fiancé, believed everything was set. This was it, their future. This fresh start, the dream they had been chasing, seemed within reach. But the question lingers. How far can the dream go before it all falls apart? Chinium. Monica and Robert had known each other for years. Their relationship rekindled through social media, thanks to Facebook. A long-distance connection sparked by nostalgia and longing. It didn't take long for them to get engaged. Things move fast, really fast. Too fast, some might say. Yet there was no turning back now. California, this was supposed to be their bright future. Robert, who had recently lost his former girlfriend Jill, found comfort in Monica's embrace. He believed she was the one. She believed this time would be different. She would finally be the mother she'd always wanted to be. She wanted to give Tori and Lily the world. But things weren't as perfect as they seemed. They never are. In the weeks that followed, Monica's behavior began to change. Her excitement gave way to tension. Her smiles, once so genuine, seemed strained, forced. And as the days passed, Robert started noticing small things, little shifts in Monica's mood. Things didn't feel quite right. And yet, they still thought it was just the usual stress, new place, new life, the adjustment. But deep down, Monica was unraveling. Before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time it is right now? Let me know in the comment. The fresh start wasn't so fresh after all. The happiness they had promised each other began to fade. The cracks, small at first, became harder to ignore. Monica was beginning to show signs of something darker. Her thoughts, her fears, growing more irrational. Was it the stress, or was it something deeper? It wasn't long before Robert noticed Monica becoming increasingly paranoid, mistrusting people, questioning things that didn't make sense. Could it have been the trauma of her past bubbling up again? Or was this the beginning of something far worse? And then came October 12th. What should have been another normal day? But that day, everything changed. And what the police and neighbors found inside that apartment, it would haunt them forever. But just weeks into this new life, something went horribly wrong. What the police and neighbors found on October 12th, 2010 was something beyond comprehension. You can feel it, can't you? The weight of something terrible waiting to happen. The air thick with foreboding. This isn't just a story of a mother and her children. This is a story of how the perfect life can turn into a nightmare in an instant. What happened in that apartment on that fateful day? You'll find out soon enough. Before we dive deeper into the details of this tragic case, there's one thing you need to know. There's a lesson here we can all take away, a lesson that could save a life. We often overlook warning signs in those closest to us, but what if knowing these signs could have stopped a tragedy? Keep watching, because we'll be unpacking these lessons throughout the story. By the end of this video, you'll have powerful insights you can use to protect your loved ones. If you believe no one should ever lose their mind to such extremes, hit subscribe. Only those who don't care about mental health will avoid it. Monica McCerrick had always hoped for a fresh start, but sometimes you can't outrun the past. Before she ever arrived in California with her daughters, her life had already been marred by struggles. Struggles that didn't simply vanish with a new city and new promises. Her history was one of repeated substance abuse, arrests, fines, a broken past that followed her wherever she went. Monica's relationship with her ex-husband, Michael Ball, was one of constant turmoil. They had tried to make it work, but their bond was fragile from the start. A 10-year age gap between them never helped, and the strain of raising children in an unstable home only made things worse. As time wore on, the problems became more evident. The child support battles between Monica and Michael grew ugly. Legal fees, emotional stress, things Monica couldn't control. That's when she decided to leave, to run. California seemed like the answer to all her problems. A new beginning. She moved there with Robert Paulson, her fiancé, and her twin daughters. But just like the past, the present couldn't remain perfect forever. Monica's past wasn't exactly a foundation for success, and despite all the hope she had for a new life, the scars from her past began to reopen. It wasn't long after Monica arrived in California that cracks began to show. A new life, yes, but the same old fears. Robert, despite his best intentions, didn't know how deep Monica's troubles ran. He saw a woman trying to build a future, trying to be better. But beneath the surface, Monica's mental state started to spiral. Her paranoia took root. Slowly at first, but it grew. She started questioning everything, anything, little things she would have overlooked before. Could Robert still love her? Was she still good enough for him? These thoughts soon turned into obsessive fear. It wasn't just the relationship that was strained. It was everything. The substance abuse hadn't magically disappeared. The deep, unresolved trauma, it never fully healed. And now in California, Monica was struggling with something far worse, a profound sense of isolation. She had moved to escape her past, but the ghosts of it were right there beside her. And in that new apartment, with Robert away on business trips, Monica's paranoia turned into something darker. Was she imagining things? Or was something truly wrong? She began questioning the people around her, Robert, his family, even the UPS delivery driver. She'd hear a noise outside the apartment, and her heart would race. Who was out there? Why were they watching her? The reality she was clinging to began to crack. She'd send texts to her friends, messages full of fear, of confusion. Monica was spiraling, her mind breaking down, and no one around her saw it happening. Or maybe they just didn't know how to help her. One day she'd tell a friend, "I feel like something terrible is coming." And at the same time, Robert was thousands of miles away, thinking everything was fine, until the phone call started, until the strange behavior grew too much to ignore. He would listen as Monica became more and more frantic, as her paranoia bled through every conversation. Robert thought things were getting better. He believed Monica had turned a corner. But when he finally returned home, he wouldn't recognize the woman he left behind. If you can't stand toxic behavior creeping into someone's life, hit that like button. Only those who ignore the signs won't support this fight for awareness. Monica had always dreamed of love, a love that would heal the broken parts of her. When she reconnected with Robert Paulson, everything seemed to align perfectly. They had known each other for years, but it wasn't until they reconnected on Facebook that their relationship took a new direction. It was as if fate had stepped in. They talked for hours, reminiscing about the past, sharing their hopes and dreams for the future. And soon, the relationship wasn't just a rekindling, it was a whirlwind. Robert, still grieving the loss of his ex-girlfriend, Jill, found solace in Monica's arms. His heart was broken, no doubt. Grief was consuming him, and yet Monica offered something he hadn't known he needed, a chance to rebuild, a chance to start fresh. But what Robert didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that Monica wasn't the woman she appeared to be. Her smile, her excitement, was a mask, a temporary shield from the things she couldn't control. And deep inside, her mind was unraveling. For Monica, this new chapter was supposed to be her redemption. But old demons, old fears began to creep in. Robert thought he knew her. He thought he could trust her. But the cracks began to show. Monica had always struggled, but now her struggles were starting to bleed into their relationship. It wasn't just the odd bad mood. It was deeper than that. It was paranoia. It was fear. She began questioning him, distrusting him in ways that seemed completely irrational. Robert, grieving the recent loss of Jill, couldn't understand what was happening. Why was Monica acting this way? What had triggered these sudden shifts in her? So one day, during a phone call with Robert, Monica began talking about a fictional horror script Robert had written with a friend. It was something they had done for fun, an idea tossed around on a whim. But to Monica, it was no longer just a script. It was a warning. Monica became convinced that the story about a man hunting children was about her daughters, and about Robert's hidden intentions. She couldn't let it go. She would bring it up in nearly every conversation. "You wrote this script for me, didn't you?" she asked again and again. She saw danger in something that, for Robert, had been a simple creative outlet. But it didn't stop there. Monica began accusing Robert of things that made no sense. She even suggested that his ex-girlfriend's tragic death wasn't a suicide, but something Robert had caused. But Monica wasn't the woman Robert thought he knew. Her mental state was deteriorating rapidly, so much so that she became convinced the script was a direct threat to her and her children. But what happens when you realize you no longer know the person you are closest to? When Robert finally returns home after weeks away, will he still recognize Monica? If you know someone who needs to see the red flags before it's too late, share this video. We can't let paranoia tear families apart. Share it and don't let it stay hidden. Monica's mind was no longer her own. It had become a battlefield. Every thought, every fear magnified. The paranoia, once subtle, was now undeniable. She started to see threats everywhere. In every corner of the apartment, in every glance exchanged between Robert and his ex-girlfriend, Jill. It wasn't just Robert anymore. Monica began to fear everyone. UPS drivers, for example. When they delivered packages, she would watch them closely, convinced that they weren't just delivering parcels. They were watching her. She thought Robert's family was conspiring against her. She believed they didn't like her, that they secretly wanted her gone. Monica had never been one to trust easily, but this was different. This was paranoia. She would send frantic messages to her friends, messages filled with fear and delusion. She spoke of an invisible enemy, a force that seemed to be closing in on her and her children. She even told one of her friends that she was convinced Robert was planning something terrible, something worse than she could understand. Monica's words weren't just concerning, they were terrifying. What Monica didn't know was that her paranoia was escalating to dangerous levels. She had already reached out for help, but she was too far gone to be saved. Her friends could see it too. They noticed the change. At first, they brushed it off. After all, it was a stressful time. But the more they heard from Monica, the more they began to worry. What happened to the woman they knew? The mother who wanted so desperately to build a life for her daughters, who seemed full of hope and optimism, was now a shell of herself. In one of her last conversations with her friend Regina, Monica mentioned something chilling. She feared Robert. She feared his ex-girlfriend, Jill. But above all, she feared herself. She said, "I think I'm losing control." And she was right. Monica had already started to slip from the edge of reason into something darker, something more dangerous. Her thoughts no longer made sense, but in her mind, everything she feared felt real. And then, on September 25th, she sent a message that would forever haunt those who received it. It wasn't just another rant. It was a cry for help, disguised as a warning. If I go missing or end up dead, it will be a cover-up. As we witness Monica's descent into paranoia, one thing becomes clear. When we start noticing extreme behavioral changes in someone we care about, it's time to take action. Listen to those around you. Your loved ones may be signaling their need for help, even if they don't directly ask for it. Keep watching because I'm about to share a lesson you can immediately apply, and by the end, you'll know exactly what to do when faced with signs like these. If you can't stand people who let paranoia destroy lives, comment I stand for truth. I read and replied to every comment. Monica's mind was a battlefield, and in those final days, she couldn't escape it. Every thought, every action felt like it was spiraling, out of her control, out of her reach. She tried to reach out, to hold on to something, anything that could make sense of the world around her, but it slipped through her fingers like sand. Her messages to friends became more frantic, more desperate, each one more disturbing than the last. In them, Monica spoke of fears that consumed her. Robert, her fiancé, the man she loved. She began to question him, to doubt everything he did, every word he said. Was he still the man she thought she knew? Or had he turned into someone unrecognizable? Wisdin. Her fear was no longer just paranoia. It was reality. She wasn't just afraid of the outside world. She was afraid of him, afraid of the very person she had once trusted with her life and her children's lives. Monica's growing isolation only made things worse. She was alone in a new place, with no one to lean on. Robert's business trips kept him away for weeks, and in that time, Monica's mental state deteriorated quickly. Her fears began to bleed into her reality. She couldn't trust anyone. She couldn't trust herself. She told her friend Regina in one of her texts, "I don't know if I'm losing it, but something feels so wrong." But it wasn't just Robert she was afraid of. Her children, Tori and Lily, became part of her growing paranoia. She started believing danger was lurking around every corner. Monica saw threats everywhere. She became convinced that someone, anyone, was plotting against her and her daughters. Her messages became darker, more direct, more chilling. And in one of those messages, she wrote something that would later haunt everyone who read it. "If anything happens to me or the girls, it's them. It's Robert and his mother. They're behind it." Her friends couldn't understand. They wanted to help, but how could they? They didn't know the depths of her fears, the pain she was carrying. Small, William. And then came the final message, the one that would mark the breaking point. If I go missing, or if something happens to me, it's them. It's all their fault. They'll say I did it, but they're wrong. Monica had gone beyond fear. She was now convinced that her own reality was collapsing. She could feel it closing in on her. Do you believe everyone deserves a chance before it's too late? Hit subscribe because only those who ignore the warning signs will refuse to care. October 11th was like any other day, or so it seemed, but for Monica, it was anything but ordinary. Her world was unraveling faster than she could hold it together. Her paranoia had already taken root, but now it was growing. Every phone call felt like a confrontation. Every text an accusation. She couldn't focus on anything but the feeling, the overwhelming sense that something terrible was coming, something she couldn't control. Monica's behavior became erratic. Her phone rang, but it wasn't Robert. It was her mother, Margaret. She tried to talk to her daughter to calm her down, but Monica's mind was elsewhere. The conversation was disjointed, filled with half-formed sentences and strange thoughts. Monica mentioned Robert's ex-girlfriend, Jill, again, a topic that hadn't been discussed in months. She spoke about ghosts in the house, not literal ones, but the invisible forces, the ones she was certain were out to get her. And her children. Monica mentioned that she could hear people watching them, that someone was always following them, always nearby. Tension began to rise. Monica's words became more incoherent, her actions more erratic. She locked the doors, checked the windows. Every few minutes, she would walk around the apartment, peering through the blinds, her eyes darting back and forth. She reached out to friends for help, but it was like talking to someone who was already lost. Her messages were all over the place. One minute she was asking for help, the next she was accusing everyone of turning against her. Her friend Regina tried to offer advice, tried to reason with her, but it didn't work. Monica wouldn't listen. She was beyond reason now. The day went on, but it didn't feel like a normal day. It felt like everything was slipping. The walls were closing in. At some point in the afternoon, Monica reached out to Robert. Her words were jumbled, frantic. She accused him of hiding things from her, of not taking her seriously. "Why are you leaving me here alone with the kids? Don't you see the danger? They're watching us," she texted him, her fears, her suspicions, growing bigger by the second. And then something changed. Something shifted. Monica's anxiety, her paranoia seemed to feed off itself. By the evening, the text stopped. She didn't answer Robert's calls. October 12th began just like any other day. But for Monica, this would be the day her breakdown would spiral into something far darker. Baiju. Like this video, if you believe no one should ever be driven to such madness. Only the indifferent won't care about this fight for understanding. The day had started like any other, but by the time the sun began to set, everything had changed. Monica's actions that night would haunt everyone who learned of them. In the quiet apartment, the tension was unbearable. Monica, in the grip of her delusions, felt the weight of the world pressing against her. Her thoughts had become fragmented, desperate. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. And in that moment of unbearable fear, Monica took a samurai-style sword, a weapon she had found in Robert's collection, and used it in the most unimaginable way. She attacked her daughters, Tori and Lily, with the same chilling violence. The sword, cold and unforgiving, became the tool of a mother who had lost herself completely. It wasn't just the sword, though. Monica's mind was so far gone that she believed this was the only way out. She slashed at her own throat, trying to end it all. But the horror didn't stop there. As if consumed by the need to erase all evidence, Monica tried to set the apartment on fire. She tried to destroy everything, to cover up what she had done. It was a futile attempt to erase the unimaginable horror that had just unfolded. But the horror didn't end there. When investigators pieced together the evidence, what they found about Monica's state of mind would change everything. The actions Monica took that night left nothing but devastation in their wake. Tori and Lily, two innocent lives, lost forever. And Monica, her mind completely shattered, left her in a place where no one could reach her. As first responders arrived on the scene, they were met with confusion, horror, and disbelief. The apartment was burning, but it wasn't the fire that made their blood run cold. It was the bodies of two little girls, lifeless, victims of a mother's madness. Monica was found in the apartment, still alive but gravely injured from her own attempt to take her life. The fire was small, contained, but the damage to the family, to the lives torn apart that night, was anything but small. First responders and firefighters worked quickly to extinguish the flames, but what they found was a scene no one was prepared for. They were left to wonder, how had this happened? How had a mother, someone supposed to protect her children, been driven to such an unspeakable act? The crime scene spoke volumes, but there were more questions than answers. Monica's mental state, her motives, were unclear, and the investigation that followed would soon uncover details that no one could have ever anticipated. The real horror of this case is how Monica's actions were overlooked until it was too late. Mental health matters, but so does early intervention. If you notice someone you love starting to withdraw, showing signs of fear or irrational behavior, don't wait for it to escalate. Seek help right away. Stay with us, because there's more to this lesson, and the full scope will give you the tools to prevent this kind of tragedy in your own life and your loved ones. Can you believe someone would let their mind break this far? If you can't stand toxic behavior like this, share this video. We have to expose the warning signs. Don't keep it to yourself. The world had already been shattered. But the aftermath, what followed, was equally devastating. Monica was no longer just a mother in pain. She was now a criminal, someone who had destroyed everything she once loved. Tom, in the quiet, sterile hospital room, Monica lay unconscious, her body broken by her own actions. The self-inflicted wounds, deep and jagged, told a story of someone who had been consumed by fear, someone who felt as though there was no escape. She had tried to end it all, to escape the chaos in her mind. Her injuries were severe, but somehow she survived. And while Monica was in the hospital, unconscious, the reality of the tragedy began to set in. Her twin daughters, Tori and Lily, were gone. The apartment fire, the bloodshed, it had all happened too fast for anyone to stop it. Her family, her friends, were left to try and make sense of what happened. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't grasp how this could happen. Monica's mother, Margaret, was beside herself, her heart shattered for her grandchildren. But it was also torn by the reality of her daughter's actions. How did this happen? How had Monica, a woman who once wanted nothing more than a better life for her children, reached this point? But the community, the people who knew Monica, felt a similar shock. They had seen a mother so dedicated to her children. She had appeared stable. She had seemed fine. But now it all felt like a lie. Detectives arrived at the hospital to question Monica, but they were met with a woman who could barely hold on to consciousness. She was dazed, disoriented. Her world was spinning out of control. Monica was now in the hands of the woman, but questions still lingered. Was this crime driven by mental illness, or was there something darker at play? The investigation began in earnest. Detectives combed through the crime scene, collecting evidence. They tried to piece together the puzzle, trying to understand what had driven Monica to do something so unimaginable. They began to dig into Monica's past, a past filled with substance abuse, arrests, and mental health struggles. The signs were there. They had always been there. Monica's mental state had deteriorated over time, but there was more, something darker, lurking beneath the surface. As the days passed, investigators uncovered more about Monica's life. Her history of paranoia, her mistrust of everyone around her, her delusions that had taken over her thoughts. They began to see that this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was the culmination of a broken mind, shattered by years of trauma, addiction, and untreated mental illness. But as the investigation continued, one question remained unanswered. Was Monica responsible for her actions, or had her mind already slipped too far beyond the point of no return? Do you think this could have been prevented? Comment Dalkin. Everyone deserves help if you believe we should have stepped in sooner. I read and replied to every comment. The trial was set. Monica McCerrick stood before the court, a mother who had taken the lives of her own children, now facing the consequences of her actions. The courtroom was tense, every eye fixed on the woman who had once been a mother, but now a defendant. It wasn't just the lawyers who were trying to make sense of the situation. Experts, psychologists, psychiatrists lined up to give their testimony. On one side, the prosecution painted a picture of cold-blooded murder of a woman who had crossed the line and never looked back. On the other side, Monica's defense team fought fiercely to make the case that mental illness had driven her to this unspeakable act. The court heard from the psychiatrists who had examined Monica during her incarceration. Dr. John Shields, a prominent psychiatrist, testified that Monica had been suffering from a severe mental illness, one that had taken root long before the crime. He described her as being in a state of psychosis, consumed by delusions and paranoia. But the prosecution wasn't swayed. They brought in their own experts, psychologists who insisted that while Monica had mental health issues, she still understood what she was doing that day. She knew it was wrong, she just didn't care. Sonny Robert, Monica's fiancé, was called to the stand. His voice was shaky as he described the woman he once loved, the woman who had spiraled into madness. He explained how her paranoia had consumed her, but he also admitted something that would haunt him forever. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how deep it went. Monica's mother, Margaret, also testified. Her voice broke as she spoke about her daughter, the sweet, loving girl she had raised. Margaret pleaded for mercy, describing Monica's mental health struggles. She didn't want her daughter to face life in prison. She begged for a chance at treatment, for Monica to be placed in a psychiatric hospital, not a prison cell. So see now. But then, on the other side of the courtroom, Michael Ball, the father of Tori and Lily, spoke. His voice was steady, unwavering, but his words, filled with rage and heartbreak, cut through the room. He was devastated, but also angry. His daughters, his babies, were gone, and the woman who had killed them was his ex-partner. He didn't ask for mercy, he asked for justice. The emotions in the courtroom were palpable. On one side, a mother's plea for understanding. On the other, a father's desperate demand for accountability. The weight of the tragedy hung over everyone. This wasn't just a trial. It was the battle between compassion and retribution. The jury had heard it all, the conflicting testimonies, the heartbreaking speeches from both sides. But now they had to decide. What would they find? Was Monica legally insane? Or had she acted out of cold, calculated malice? Subscribe if you believe justice should be served no matter the reason. Only those who turn a blind eye would side with indifference. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed in, their decision looming over everyone in the room like a heavy cloud. Monica McCerrick, once a mother who had dreamed of a better life for her children, now stood at the center of it all. The guilty verdict was read aloud. First-degree murder. Tears filled Monica's eyes, but they weren't tears of relief. They were the tears of a woman who had destroyed everything. The jury had deliberated. They had weighed the arguments, the evidence, and the testimonies from both sides. But in the end, they found Monica guilty. What happened next was almost a formality. The judge, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had to do, sentenced Monica to 2 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. It was the end of Monica's story, the woman who had once wanted nothing more than to build a new life with her children. The sentencing was final. The law had spoken. Monica McCerrick would spend the rest of her life in prison. But for those left behind, for Tori and Lily's family, the real question still lingered. What led this mother to destroy everything she once loved? Was it mental illness that drove her to this point? Or was there something more sinister at play? The verdict may have been delivered, but the question remained unanswered. Did Monica deserve life in prison? Or had her mental illness stripped her of the ability to truly understand her actions? The case is closed, but the moral questions remain. What do you think? Did the jury get it right, or did they overlook the true cause of Monica's actions? Was she simply a mother who snapped, or was her breakdown the result of a lifetime of untreated illness? As we reach the conclusion of this heart-wrenching story, it's time to talk about the most important thing we can all learn from this tragedy: protecting our loved ones. What happened here to Monica's daughters could happen to anyone if we don't pay close attention. But understanding the warning signs and knowing how to act can prevent similar events in your life. Here are 5 crucial lessons you should always keep in mind when it comes to protecting your children and loved ones. Lesson 5. Trust your instincts. The first step in protecting your loved ones is understanding that gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. In Monica's case, the signs of her paranoia, fear, and erratic behavior were visible to those around her, but it wasn't acted upon quickly enough. Whether it's a parent, friend, or partner, if you sense that someone is acting outside of their normal behavior, pay attention. Sometimes your intuition can be the first line of defense in keeping them and yourself safe. Lesson 4, recognize the signs of mental health struggles. Mental health issues don't always come with a clear warning. Many times it manifests as subtle shifts in behavior, as we saw with Monica. Behavioral changes such as heightened paranoia, confusion, and erratic actions should not be dismissed as just stress. In Monica's case, her growing fears and delusions were dismissed or misunderstood by her loved ones. If you notice any shifts in mood, behavior, or speech, it's crucial to address them early. Seek professional help, whether it's a therapist, counselor, or a trusted medical professional. Lesson 3. Communicate openly and without judgment. Communication is key to preventing tragedy. Monica's situation spiraled because she didn't have a trusted person she could turn to for help. She did reach out, but her paranoia clouded her messages, making it difficult for others to recognize the seriousness of her situation. Encourage open communication with your loved ones, especially during times of stress. Make sure they feel they can speak honestly without fear of judgment. Check in regularly on their mental health, not just their physical well-being. Lesson 2. Understand the importance of early intervention. Early intervention is the best defense against tragedy. Monica was aware that something was wrong, but by the time she reached out for help, it was too late. The same is true for anyone dealing with mental health issues. If you notice the early warning signs, take action right away. That could mean contacting a mental health professional, starting therapy, or seeking support from close family or friends. Don't wait for things to escalate out of control before you act. Lesson 1. Be proactive in creating a safety net. This is perhaps the most important lesson of all. Protecting your loved ones means being proactive about their well-being before a crisis hits. That means establishing a support network, a group of people who are willing and able to offer support when things go wrong. If someone you care about has a history of mental health struggles, make sure there is a clear plan in place for help and intervention should things spiral out of control. This might include knowing who to call, where to go for help, and having regular check-ins. By understanding what happened here and knowing these steps, you can take control of your own family's safety. So, what should you do next? Start by recognizing the signs, building that support network, and taking action when it's needed most. The best way to protect your loved ones is by being vigilant, informed, and proactive. Let's not wait for another tragedy like this to remind us that it's time to act. Thank you for watching. If you found this lesson valuable, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment below. What's your opinion on how mental health is handled in cases like this? Let us know. Your thoughts matter to us. For more stories like this and lessons we can learn from them, check out our other videos. We'll see you next time.